Picture a car that looks like it's frozen in the middle of a wheelie. The grille and the front bumper are gone, the nose is hiked up to the air, and the whole front end is balanced high on a pair of skinny tires that look too small for it. It looks wrong, like something went sideways at the body shop. But then, the light goes green. The front wheels lift clean off the ground, and it runs the quarter mile in 9 seconds flat. 4 full seconds quicker than the best muscle car out of a Detroit factory could do at the time. What I'm describing is the iconic and yet uniquely American straight axle gasser. And for a brief period in American motorsport history, the straight axle gasser craze was the hottest thing going. They could be found at virtually every drag strip in America, and the best part was that it was regular people like you and I that could build them. All it took was a little bit of money, some mechanical know-how, and a willingness to read the rule book very carefully. Gassers were everywhere, but it seemed as fast as the rise of the gasser was, its fall was just as quick. And to understand why the gasser craze even started and why it died off so rapidly, we have to go ahead and start at the beginning.
Hot rodding has really come of age in the last decade.
Organized drag racing, the kind with real rules and associations behind it, got going around 1949, and it grew into one of the biggest spectator sports in the country almost overnight. The National Hot Rod Association, the NHRA, was one of the early groups that formed around it, and their rulebook would end up creating one of the wildest trends in the history of the sport. A few years later, in 1955, the NHRA introduced the gas classes, a place where just about any street car and driver with some ingenuity could race and potentially win. Gassers, as they came to be known, started out as ordinary streetcars. This gas class birthed the name and class of car known as the gasser, which started out as ordinary streetcars, but they wouldn't stay ordinary for long. The origin of the straight axle gasser comes from the way that the NHRA set up the rules for its near stock drag racing classes. The gas coupe and sedan classes, or again known as gassers, were not streamlined purpose-built drag cars that we all know and love. They ran on simple gasoline, there was no nitrous allowed, and early on they were required to be pretty close to stock. Early gasser rules said there was no engine setback allowed, and it required the cars not only to be street legal, but also to be registered for street use in order to race. This was back in the 50s when again drag racing was just starting to pick up real momentum in the public eye. The gasser class was a place where people could bring their lightly modified street cars to the strip, which were not high dollar cars by any means, and have some fun and even win some races. And the cars that ran this class didn't have to be new either. There were plenty of, late 30s Willys coupes running around in the gasser class. Ohio George Montgomery had a 1933 Willys coupe that he drove to a victory at the A-Gas Detroit Nationals in 1959. Compared to more modern cars in the period, the high hood line of the Willys coupe gave his World's Wildest Willys a very different downward looking slope, but that was using the early gasser class rules. The different classes were based only on a car's weight per cubic inch of displacement and whether or not it was supercharged. Early on, the fastest class was under 9 pounds per cubic inch, and the heaviest class was about 14 pounds of weight per cubic inch. The thing was, lots of modifications were allowed, and one of the obvious ones, especially to make a 1933 Willys coupe competitive with more modern cars, was an engine swap. Now, engine setback wasn't allowed. But how do you really define engine setback when you had to cut the firewall open to even just fit in a larger motor, not pushing it back? If you use the stock motor mount locations, just a bigger motor would need more space. As people's ingenuity caught on, the NHRA started trying to figure out ways to write the rules to comply with all of these attempts to squeeze more power into cars like this little Willys coupe. In the 60s, they changed the rules better to define terms like engine setback and even to allow some of it, how to deal with superchargers, what kind of mods were and were not allowed, and at that same time, drag racing really entered its heyday in the early 60s. In 1962, the NHRA took the gloves off when it came to the gasser class and basically took the rulebook and threw it across the room. There was a lot more stuff that became fair game, and now one of the biggest limitations that these cars were running into was no longer power or power adders, but traction in the form of the tires they were running. Rubber compounds in the early 1960s were a lot harder than you might expect, so once you maxed out the rear tire's width, the next best thing you could do was get more weight on them. But lightening the front of the car by cutting holes in it or making the rear significantly heavier with ballast was against the rules. The NHRA's rules basically birthed the straight axle gasser because of what people couldn't do. The minimum wheelbase allowed in the class was 92 inches, and the engine setback was strictly limited by the rules, because that was based on measurements like the position of the front two most spark plugs. And the gasser class required the engine to be mounted in the front, so you couldn't just put the motor in the back. The solution that most of the best gasser builders and racers hit on was to swap out the front ends of these cars that they had with a straight axle. In doing so, the car sat higher up in the front now, kind of like a squatted truck almost. But with the front suspension raised with those tall leaf springs there, now that the car was squatting more in the back, basically every one of these cars was rear-wheel drive that was being raced, that weight transfer to the back tires now, once they would hit off the line, was a lot easier just based on the physics of that reversed rake of the car. And when people would do modifications on these cars to reduce weight, they ended up only doubling down on the gasser look. Think of your Tri-5 Chevys with that solid axle in the front, and then the front grills and front bumpers taken off of them. The cars just looked a whole lot different because now there was less front end and it was jacked up way higher. And if you looked at it from the side, the wheel well gaps could be huge, and because those were now larger, it was very easy to see the fender well headers that were fitted on a lot of these cars for the performance gain with improved exhaust flow. Weird looking or not, this strategy was a winner. Most of the famous gassers in the 60s had straight axles and these lifted front ends. The range of different classes in the gasser series gave lots of different teams chances to win. Dave Hales and his S&S racing team set records in the DG and CG classes. Fred Stone, Leonard Woods Jr., and the driver Doug Cook ran their Swindler Willys coupes to the AGS and BGS class records. And in fact, Big John Mazmanian and driver Bones Ballo ran the first 9-second pass in a stock-bodied car. Charlie Proit drove a supercharged 57 Bel Air that was later called Superstition with a 389 Pontiac engine in it until that blew up. That was allegedly replaced with a 421 Super Duty-esque motor that was supercharged. That straight axle gasser was a monster on the strip. With all these famous cars running, this was becoming an awesome spectator sport. And then in 1964, things got a lot more competitive as tons of companies got in on the game. Camshaft companies were a shoe-in to sponsor these races because the people that wanted to modify their cars went to these races, watched what ran fast, and if that brand's name was on the side of that car, that could probably help them sell a bunch of new cams. Quarter-mile times dropped into the 9-second range routinely, and sub-9-second sprints were now becoming a possibility. And again, a 9-second quarter-mile time was seconds faster than anything from the factory back in those days. The best muscle cars of the era were in the high 13s. Watching these gassers move back then with quarter-mile trap speeds of about 150 must have been incredible to watch. To put that in perspective, that'd be like watching a 10-second supercharged Mustang run at the quarter mile today, and then seeing something run 4 seconds faster, which was a 6-second quarter mile, being a purpose-built Pro Mod car. That's the level of vastness in terms of difference. And the gasser wars soldiered on through 1967, with cars becoming more and more extreme as manufacturers and aftermarket performance companies kept pushing the envelopes. Larger engines, superchargers, you name it. Everything the NHRA rulebook allowed was tried and tried again. Some teams even added rear cross members with a slot full of lead in them to help add more weight to the back of the car. And I'm sure there were countless other tricks that people tried that snuck past officials that I just don't know about. However, in '67, when the gasser craze really reached its peak in terms of overall performance, that's when the slip down started. There were quite a few reasons that all hit around the same time that made the straight axle gasser just far less competitive. And the first one being the tire formulas just got a lot better at this time. Tires were getting stickier, they could put the power down more, and that meant that a lot of higher horsepower cars and seriously fast vehicles no longer needed that reverse rake to be effective. The second reason was that there was a new class of hot rods that began to show up in the racing scene. Some racing teams started moving away from gassers into the new funny car classes. Funny car classes offered more flexibility and more strange looking design choices, which took some of the straight axle gassers' thunder. The third reason was that new chassis were becoming available. As cars got faster and faster and as trap speeds started going up, aerodynamics started to play a big role. Because if you were sitting like this the whole way up the track, you're basically driving a parachute. The Camaro and Mustang were more aerodynamic as they were, and with better tire compound at those higher speeds, the need to rake them in reverse was just kind of gone. And the fourth reason was that the gasser class had always been a way to get into racing for the regular Joe without too much big corporate sponsorship. But now that motorsports were getting big, companies with huge sponsorship budgets were starting to get in on the action, and pro racing teams could make a living touring the states. There was less room at the highest level of competition for small teams, and the kind of seat of the pants modifications that made many of these grassroots gassers so popular. The gasser class began to rapidly fade over the next few years. NHRA rule changes happened and it kind of pushed the class more and more to the brink, until 1972 when the gasser class was disbanded. However, even though the NHRA got rid of the official gasser classes, the cars maintained a small but dedicated following, and other organizations like the AHRA, the American Hot Rod Association, filled in the gap somewhat. But they were pretty much gone from official racing circuits. This remained the case until 2009, when the NHRA created its Hot Rod Heritage Racing Series, with some classes that recreated the old gasser class. While the straight axle gasser is a pretty small niche today in 2026, there are a few companies that still offer parts and advice on how to convert your car into a straight axle gasser. If you wanted in 2026 to build something with that old late 50s, early 60s gasser spirit, you could still do so, or you can find them for sale online because they do pop up every once in a while. And because there is such a cult following for them, they do trade hands pretty often inside of that niche crowd. So while the straight axle gasser trend is something that only had a very specific moment in motorsport history, it still was able to build a strong, albeit small, fan base that exists today still. There are very passionate gasser people out there. I see a marketplace all the time, people selling like new recreation builds of older gassers. And honestly, it's pretty astonishing when you go to any show and there's, a slew of old classic muscle cars, and yet the open header gasser pulls up, because it's not just the sound, it's the whole package that takes you back to a different era. An era in motorsport that was uniquely defined by an engineering choice that people like you and I could have done to their car just to skate the rule books. And that's why I had to make a video on the rise and fall of the straight axle gasser. It's one of America's most iconic automotive creations. Thank you all for watching another video. If you did enjoy this, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out. And as always, if you have any gasser stories that are relevant to this video, I would love to hear them in the comments down below. Whenever this releases, I want to wish you a happy 250. God bless you, and God bless America. I will see you all in the next one.